Good evening. Tonight on Firebase, we talk about gold. I'm your host, Gary French. I hope that little teaser piqued your interest and you decided that you want to stay and watch this show. You know, now, how many of you have plenty of gold at home? Let's see hands. Oh, I can't see any hands. Well, if you do or you don't have gold or precious metal, or if you're thinking of investing in gold or precious metal, then for those of you here in Kentucky, you need to pay close attention. And notice I use the word pay close attention. It's not just a play on words, because here in Kentucky, I think never has overlooked a tax that they just don't really thoroughly enjoy. And that's for both the Republicans and the Democrats in our state. If you have gold or precious metals here in the state or the Commonwealth, you are paying taxes on that gold or silver that you own or you are thinking about acquiring. Well, recently we had a Firebase supporter, and in this case, I'd like to call him a field reporter by the name of Jack LeFeber. He had the opportunity to speak with a freshman, a Kentucky freshman representative by the name of Doan. And they had a great opportunity to talk about a bill that is called HB 213. HB, House Bill 213, is legislation that has been proposed to remove taxation upon your right to own gold or silver, any other precious metal. And you have to ask yourself in light of this show tonight, why is this important, and is it anything that's important to me? I think that you will discover that what Representative Doan has to share and what Jack LeFeber is able to ask questions, pertinent probing questions for him tonight, will be of tremendous insight to you, because this is something that's going to help the economy within Kentucky, and it really will get us in step with the 42 other states in our union that have removed taxation. I'm actually pleased of what's happening in the General Assembly right now because they've recently lowered the state income tax from 4.5 down to 4%. I want to get with the other states that don't have any state income tax whatsoever, because here's what we've seen in a lot of the states that have taxation. Politicians, and there again, let me be an equal opportunity accuser. They love to tax you and me. They love to tax you because they use it on their pet projects, and they name another post office or another bridge or whatever. You get the point, folks. Well, on this show, Representative Doan is sharing the legislation that he's presented. Well, Jack LeFeber went over to Frankfort, Kentucky to talk with Representative Doan about that. And Jack was joined by, I should say, his two production assistants. One is Nicholas LeFeber, a son, and also Colin Howard. They were able to record this, and I think a very highly professional manner, and give us some good information. I want you to watch this short video, just a small clip, and then after we get back from watching this video, we will go to our regular break, and I'm bringing in two great friends, but I think two experts in their respective fields that can give some insight and reaction to HB 213. So let's watch that short video clip right now.
So I am the House Representative for House District 69, which covers Erlanger, Ellesmere, Independence, Florence. It straddles Boone and Kenton counties here in northern Kentucky.
Okay, and so you are a freshman in this session, is that correct?
I am a freshman, yes, my first legislative session.
And is Frankfort everything you were led to believe?
Oh, everything and more. You know, you learn a whole lot going down there. They always make that joke, you're drinking from the fire hose, and certainly we're doing that.
Right. Well, I appreciate you meeting with us today. Now, you've introduced some legislation I think is very important. It's called House Bill 213. Can you explain to us what is HB 213?
So it's a simple piece of legislation, but it's a good piece of legislation. What House Bill 213 does is it accepts currency and bullion from our state sales tax.
Okay, great. Now, taxing gold and silver is kind of an unusual and outdated practice in the United States now. What other states have already ended this tax?
Well, so, whenever you talk about something that Kentucky does, you have to go back to the old Mark Twain quote that when the world ends, I want to be in Kentucky, because everything gets there about 20 years later. So, 42 states now have ended this practice of taxing gold and silver, and so we're hoping to make Kentucky number 43.
Great. Well, and what gave you this idea, or did constituencies reach out to you? What brought on this legislation?
I've always been a big believer in sound money. I graduated from college in 2009 with an economics degree. Primarily what I focused on in that education was the economic crisis that occurred. An economic crisis that occurred as a result of financial markets being manipulated by big corporate interest. Gold and silver is one of those areas that it's really difficult to manipulate. And so, anything that I can do to make sure that we've got more sound money here in Kentucky and that people are able to make decisions better about what they do with their savings is where I'm going to be.
Now, can you elaborate on how taxing gold and silver harms Kentucky businesses in Kentucky?
Sure. Just like what I was talking about when I made the Mark Twain reference, if you look at Kentucky, all 7 states that surround us, they don't tax gold and silver. They don't tax currency or bullion. And so for small businesses here in Kentucky, particularly in northern Kentucky where I'm located, we border Ohio and Indiana, our people are just going to go out of state, make those purchases, and they're actually going to save a lot of money doing that. So it really does hurt the small coin operators that are in my district and those that are around the borders throughout our entire state.
Has anybody ever tried to introduce this legislation before in recent times?
It's been introduced before. It's kind of one of those that continues to come up year after year. For some reason, we just don't want to move quickly on things in Kentucky. We like to take our time and move slowly. What we've started to do in Kentucky is to move from that income-based model to a consumption-based model. So we're starting to see a lot of movement on these consumption taxes, particularly repealing those that are unnecessary and in favor of ones where there's actually a lot more traction and are going to matter on our state budget.
Now that should affect like the small time savers. How would this change affect just the average, not businesses, but the average Kentucky citizen? What would this do for them?
It gives them an opportunity to put their money in a resource that's not going away. We've had gold forever, we've had silver forever, and it really gives them an opportunity to invest in a future and to not lose their money. If you're holding everything in cash, we've seen rampant inflation over the last 2 years, particularly because of COVID-19 and some bailouts that we did at the federal level. And you're going to be able to save that money and let it grow over time at an interest where it's appreciating as opposed to depreciation of cash.
And isn't it true in the course of human history, I love the way that sounds, that really gold and silver, precious metals, that's the one constant form of asset or value that's kept a value throughout all governments. Is that correct?
Yeah, there's the old saying, it's good as gold. And it's always going to be there. It's always going to be good. It is the form of currency that we've selected as humans, and it's continued throughout all of history.
It's kind of ironic. When you think of Kentucky, everybody thinks of like Fort Knox, right?
Sure.
Oh, we got all this gold here in Kentucky, except, well, unless you're the average person, not so much. So hopefully this would turn this around. So let's talk about the status. Where is HB 213 sitting right now in Frankfort?
So House Bill 213 has been taken from, we have what's called the Committee on Committee, so every bill that's filed goes into that committee. The chairman of Appropriations and Revenue, who's a very good friend of mine, has moved that bill out of there and into his Appropriations and Revenue Committee. So it is sitting in a committee where there is some opportunity for some good action.
Does this bill have pretty widespread support from both sides of the House? I would think both Democrat and Republican citizens would be in favor of something like this.
Kentucky's an interesting state. We have an 80-member Republican majority in the House. So we have a massive supermajority where, you could essentially ignore 29 Republicans and still pass whatever you want. So there's great support on the Republican side from this. We've got a number of good co-sponsors on the bill, and it's always something that has been meant to happen. but just hasn't had the legs or hasn't had the right opportunity. So I'm looking forward to this session to see that move through. Hopefully we can get a committee hearing soon and get that put in some type of bill.
Now, you mentioned some co-sponsors. Who else co-sponsored this with you?
So Candy Massaroni, Steve Rawlings has co-sponsored as well, Savannah Maddox, some good Liberty legislators, all who really want to see sound money principles come into our society.
What can Kentuckians do to help push this out of committee onto the calendar of the vote? What can the citizens do? Who do they contact?
You should contact your state representative. We get tons and tons of emails, but we see them come through. Make phone calls, go set up visits with them. That's something that's been really helpful for me. As a freshman legislator, you don't always know what the people want to do unless they reach out to you and tell you. So, make sure you get online, find out who your rep is, and pressure them to co-sponsor that bill and get that thing moving.
Anything related to this bill you'd like to add that we haven't touched on?
I feel really good about it. I think that we're going to get some good traction coming up, and hopefully if we can get this bill through on the House side, we'll get it over to the Senate, and that's where we probably need to be focusing our work a little bit more. It seems like the House is ready to move on this. They're happy about it, and we just need to make sure that our bill gets clean through the Senate without any attachments, and we'll be good to go.
Well, thanks so much to Jack LeFeber and his assistants going out there to take a look at that. Friends, we want you to stay tuned through this short commercial break, and we will be joined with our special guest, Bob Scott and Chad Vaughn, right after this break. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back. We are so delighted that you've chosen to be with us this evening. Here on Firebase this evening, we heard a short video with Kentucky Representative Stephen Doan as he was giving an interview to our very own Jack LeFeber and was talking about HB 213. Well, I shared with you before we went to the break that I'd have two special guests, and I do. First one that I have is Bob Scott. You've seen him before, and then also he's a dear friend, but also a very dear friend, I might as well say a lifelong friend in Chad Vaughn. Bob is a consultant with a lot of churches and businesses, and Chad is equally important. He helps to run Firebase Coffee, which supports this TV show, but also he's a retired Army lieutenant colonel. Gentlemen, welcome to the show. Bob?
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, honored to be here.
All right, good. Chad, glad that you're with us. First time you've been on the air with us here, brother.
Thank you.
Hey, listen, let's get right into this. Jack was talking to Representative Doan about HB 213, which is to remove taxation or to exempt gold from taxation here in the Commonwealth of Kentucky. And Bob, let me start with you. It's a very simple question, or a couple of questions. Is there a benefit for the average citizen, especially here in Kentucky? And I suppose even more than that, what's the value of this, just from your perspective?
Well, from my perspective, I'm not a fan of taxation, period. And I think any
You're
opportunity.
radical.
Yeah, I know. I'm one of those way out there type folks. So I think any opportunity we have to lessen or take away taxes, generally speaking, is going to be a good thing. So on the surface, it sounds pretty good to me.
Yeah. Chad, what's your response to that? Because especially, is there value to this, removing the taxation? And I actually can hear the far left people right now saying, yeah, but if you don't have taxes, you don't have bridges and roads. And they always throw that same stuff out there. Is there value to exempting gold from taxation?
Exactly. And so I look at beyond the spiritual realm. I break things down, and this is what I teach our family is PIM, power, influence, and money. And so taxation obviously is money. There will always be someone who says, out of $1,900, $136 taxation from a sales charge, we could use that. Really? Well, you have to ask yourself, how many people are actually buying physical gold bullion to keep at their house? But overall, do I think that this is a good policy, a good move? I absolutely do, for a couple of reasons. But one of those is if folks are buying, then they save on the sales tax. And two, this might encourage more people to buy gold and silver so they don't have to pay the sales tax and the additional capital gains tax that the IRS requires every year that you own and possess.
Yeah, that's a great observation. I look at the states just as an example that have lower taxes, or as an example, no state income tax. Those states seem to be having a booming economy, and help our audience understand, why is that so? Why is that so that the states that have no state income tax, or they don't tax their precious metals, they seem to have a booming economy? Chad, I'll go with you first.
Well, really, I think that it goes back to, I hate to say my framework that I use is PIM, but it is about the power and the money. And it's the old phrase, the free state. So the more that people feel restricted, specifically in the monetary realm, the less freedom they feel to maybe go to the movies, maybe go out to a restaurant. Specifically in the most recent past, when inflation is up more than it has been. And I won't get political sides, but I think we all know what I'm talking about.
Chad, I think you bring up a great point. Mark, I'm sorry, Bob. When Representative Doan says Mark Twain, this quote, there's where the mark came from. When the world ends, I want to be Kentucky. Is that a slight on Kentucky, or is he just stating a truth and a reality here in Kentucky?
Well, Kentucky, I think by its very nature, even though early on was more democratically controlled, obviously that has changed in the last 4 or 5 years, was still considered a conservative state. So, because of that, I think we have tended to lag a little bit behind. But, getting back to the earlier point with regard to states that are flourishing, and Texas and Florida are two of them that come to mind very quickly. If you're looking at it from the corporate standpoint, obviously you see companies like Tesla, that have absolutely fled California and went to Texas because of their no taxation or lesser taxation policies. And to an extent, there were things that happened here in our state where we saw Ford come down here. We saw Toyota came in. I happened to be involved in the Georgetown market around the start when Toyota first came into Kentucky. And there were a lot of concessions that were made taxation-wise that made that favorable. And we see the blessing and the boom that's resulted as a result of having those corporate businesses here in our state.
Both of you making valid points that I find very intriguing and interesting to me. And when you make mention of California and Texas, but let's throw New York in the mix and Florida as well, the states that have lower taxes and more personal freedom and really adhere to we the people are the states that flourish. We saw under the scenario of imposition of lockdowns under the COVID-19 fiasco, that now all of the information that's coming out is saying that yes, it was some dubious things going on, but this program is not about that. So we see the government controlling, and they're taking away our personal freedom. And with that thought, what Chad made mention of freedom and states, and what you just commented on as well, Bob, is this push for gold and exempting gold from taxation a radical idea, or is it just push from right-wing end-time preppers?
Well, I can answer that by saying that we know apparently there's 42 other states that didn't think it was radical.
Great point.
That have implemented it. And I would say a few of those would be what would be considered blue states in the process. So no, I wouldn't say it's radical at all. I think that the more money that you can keep in the individual's pocket, and I'll say it, might be crucified for saying this, but also in the corporate pocket, which obviously we know corporations, and I already mentioned Toyota and Ford in our state, not to mention other corporations, UPS. The more money that they have for investment, it just turns out it's a
Yeah.
down
Yeah.
flow process that everybody will benefit usually in the long run.
Yeah, that's true. The thing that I learned a long time ago, that the more money that the individual has in HIP National Bank, the better the economy seems to survive right there. And Chad, we've got about 40 seconds here. When he talks about there's no devaluing of gold, I've often thought about this. Is that true? Is there no devaluation? There's no depreciation of gold? And what's the benefit for this average Joe Q public?
Well, and that's a great point. And as the representatives stated when asked, gold and silver has always had a value. A value is something that we as an individual place on something that we really want. So it's the degree in which we want it. So gold has always been valued by humans, and silver as well. I don't think that's ever going to change.
Yeah. Boy, two great comments from both of you. Folks, we've been spending our time this evening with Bob Scott and Lieutenant Colonel Chad Vaughn as we've talked about Kentucky HB 213. Our own Jack LeFeber went and interviewed with Representative Stephen Doan and got the lowdown, the skinny on all of this. And even former gubernatorial candidate Savannah Maddox supports this. Friends, we'll wrap all this up this evening right after this short break. Don't go away. Welcome back. Glad that you decided to stay with us through that short commercial break. I want to remind you that this show is brought to you by Firebase Coffee. And we have an opportunity right now with Firebase Coffee to get Bibles to Pakistan. Go to the website. It's right there on the screen, firebasecoffee.com. Use the code that you'll see on the opening page, B and the number 2P, B2P, which is Bible to Pakistan, and help us send funds to this church in Abbeville, Louisiana, as they're shipping 12,500 Bibles to Pakistan, even as we're talking. And friends, you may say, well, I don't drink coffee. The point is, go online, make your order, and help us get the Bibles over there. Well, I've had the great privilege of having two dear friends with me on the show this evening, Bob Scott and Lieutenant Colonel Chad Vaughn. And we want to wrap up this show this evening, and they'll have about 90 seconds or so each because I took up too much of their time. To wrap up, we're talking about HB 213 here in Kentucky about exempting gold from taxation. And Brother Bob, since I started with you, I'll let you go first as we wrap up this evening.
Well, what you just said is the most important thing, and that's sowing into good, fertile soil. And I've known you, Gary, for the last, I want to say it's been about 5 years. I've had an opportunity to come and share a couple times at your church. And folks, I'm going to put a plug in for you, Gary. I know that your ministry, you are the real deal. You are exactly who you say you are. And whether you're a coffee drinker or not, you need to be supporting this ministry because it is, folks, I'm going to say it, it's one of the few ministries out there that is telling the whole truth and nothing but the truth, right now. And I know the season that I've been through, and I could talk for another 10 minutes on it, but I will say that when you put your trust in the Lord and your faith in the Lord and you sow into good soil, it's going to produce a harvest, a bountiful harvest that you would have never expected in your entire lifetime.
Well, thank you. Very kind to say that, Bob, and I appreciate that so much. I'm humbled and honored by that. Colonel Vaughn, I know that this is a great opportunity for you to share your insights and conversations about not only about HB 213, but about what this TV show and about the coffee company is all about. So, my friend, the floor is yours.
Thanks, brother. And so as we wrap this session up, whether we are talking gold or silver, we have to think long term, and I mean forever. And so it's about where are you putting your strength? Where are you putting, you're drawing your strength from? Where are you storing up your treasures? While we've talked about taxation on gold and silver, it's really more about what is God doing in your life. And
Yeah.
so you've heard Gary talk about Firebase coffee, which is near and dear to us for many reasons. And if you're a first-time watcher, it's real simple. It's about having a cup of coffee with God and being able
Yeah.
to tell folks about his good news and what his son has done for us. And there's strength in there. And so when people are thinking, I've got to buy this gold, I got to buy this silver, I got to store this up, you're thinking with your carnal mind and you're thinking out of fear. And you don't have to. You don't have to. That is not the long-term answer. God is.
Yeah. Yeah. Amen. Great statements from both of you. As you were talking, I was thinking, where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. But the Lord reminded me of something else that's even more so important. And friends, you've tuned into this program this evening. You're either seeing us on local television or on social media. The Bible reminds us that what does it profit a man if he gains the whole world and yet loses his own soul? I want you to know that there's more to life than gold. There's more to life than taxes, and those are important. But what's most important is whether or not you know Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior. Turn to him right now, and your life will be far more valuable than gold. Until next week, I'm Gary French. Thanks for watching this most recent episode. Click below the like button. Provide any comments that you like. Also, we will get back to you as soon as we can after you write to us at P.O. Box 39, Perry Park, Kentucky, 40363. Also, let us know if you like really good coffee, and we'll send that out to you as soon as we possibly can. What's the name of the coffee? Firebase.